Hello, welcome to That VidBlaster Guy. I'm Tom Sinclair, That VidBlaster Guy, with hopefully bringing you another great show. You remember our mantra, we forgot it last week. One guy with one PC can really do one awesome broadcast. And it takes practice. Practice makes perfect. Today's show is going to be kind of interesting. I'm working on a borrowed PC. Actually, it's a PC I'm building for a client, so we can say we're kind of torture testing it. But it's not my regular broadcast box. So some of the things that I like to have available to me, like my Korg Nano control with all my macros built into it, I don't have and haven't had a chance to put together on this one. So we'll have to do everything manually, the good old-fashioned way. Today's show is going to kind of be a little bit of a smorgasbord. Sorry, I got distracted by a question in the chat, and I'll get to that question in just a second. Today's show is going to be a little bit of a smorgasbord of some questions that have been asked in the past that I haven't answered, and then I want to talk about some of the features in version 3 that are different from those in version 2 or version 1. I appreciate the folks that tuned in to the Tech Buzz broadcast now yesterday, where I was a guest there. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate Stephen Haywood and Richard Cleveland for inviting me on the show. You can watch that on YouTube. I think it's the Tech Buzz channel. And it's just the same old me. I mean, it's just me doing the same things I do here, being stupid, and doing my best to convince you that broadcasting is a lot of fun. Full disclosure, I am a VidBlaster reseller. This is like a giant 1-hour infomercial for VidBlaster, but I really do think it is the best live video production software out there. And every week, every month, it gets better and better. Currently, we are using here version 3.11. Now, version 3.11, in fact, all of the version 3s are betas. Version 3 has not yet been officially released. So if you want to use version 3, do so, but do so with a word of caution. That is, there's some features that have not yet been implemented in version 3, like, for example, the good old playlist, where you can take a list of files and use the player to play them in sequential order. In fact, the playlist is going to be, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to betas. Betas also have bugs. So you may encounter some bugs in version 3. If you're using version 3, or if you want to use version 3 for your regular production, you want to go ahead and test the things that you normally do and make sure they work the way you expect them. The worst thing is to be out in the field and to be ready to do a broadcast and to use some untested portion of the software and find out that it doesn't work, or it doesn't work the way you want it to work, or it doesn't work the way you think it should work, or the way it used to work. And then suddenly you've got egg on your face with your client. So check it out in advance, and version 3 is a beta. You know, that's kind of a strength and a weakness with VidBlaster is, you know, all the betas are out there for everybody to use. Pretty much there only have been 3 or 4, maybe 5, well, maybe more like 8. But anyway, a handful or a double handful of betas that have not been released to the general public at one point or another. So it's really cool to see the neat new features before they're officially released, but at the same time, there's the downside that it's not really ready for official release yet. Hopefully that'll be sometime this summer or early in the fall. That's my prediction. We'll see. Now let's talk a little bit about some of the new features coming up in version 3. Version 3 has made, I think, some pretty darn significant improvements in CPU usage. Currently, I'm running an i7, a 2600K, not overclocked in any way, so it's 3.4 megahertz, 4 cores, 8 threads, and I'm looking at my Windows Task Manager right now, and my total CPU usage is bumping between 28 and 33%. Now, what I'm doing is I'm recording, and I'm using a resolution of 864 by 480, 30 frames a second. I'm recording that to the hard drive here on my PC. I am streaming that using Flash Media Live Encoder, 864 by 480, 30 frames a second, 1200 BPS for the video and 128K BPS for the audio. Hat tip to Mike Phillips for encouraging me to bump that up just to get the better quality of audio, and really, really trying hard to do good audio. So the CPU usage, I think, has come pretty far down. I'm using, right now I'm using 2 effect modules. Both of them are chroma keys. And those tend to be the modules that are kind of heavy duty in terms of taking a lot of CPU usage. The first one was the effect module at the intro, and the second one is the module that you're looking at now, which has got the cool backdrop that Martin K. did for me. And in fact, the intro was from Martin K. too. Thanks, Martin. Appreciate that. One of the ways that VidBlaster has made better use of resources is kind of taken away a little bit, I think, of some of its natural appeal, but not too much. One of the things that appeals to me with VidBlaster is, and I'm a visual guy, is I'm looking at my left monitor here, and I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 video pictures. Now, not all of them are me. Some of them are still shots. But I can see what's going on, and if I move, those move. And so I've got, real-time feel for what all my shots look like. I've got, myself with just raw camera, and we'll take off the lower third. And then I've got myself with this shot, and that's also in another effects module. That's the end of the intro. And then we can put the lower third on, and then I can also see what's going out on the streamer and what's being recorded on the recorder in terms of video. So I can see all that. But with that comes a lot of CPU usage to do the little teeny videos. So that's 2, 4, 6 videos that have movement in them right now. And then there are 2 still shots. One is this shot, and one is a shot that I'm going to use in just a minute, which is that shot. So one of the strategies that Mike has used, Mike Versteeg, the developer of VidBlaster, one of the strategies that he's used is to take some of these smaller modules that are not doing anything other than just showing me, the operator, a little bit of video. And when VidBlaster senses that CPU resources are running a little low, then it begins to cut the frame rate in all these little modules, something that he calls dynamic display refresh. So all these little teeny displays dynamically refresh depending upon their usage. Now, I've got my notes on all this, so I'm referring to my notes because I don't always remember it all. The same thing also occurs in the new player module and the RTSP, RTMP-in module. Both of those display video and will display moving video. So that's a big way that VidBlaster has cut the CPU usage, is basically by maybe dropping back 20 frames a second, 15 frames a second to things that nobody else sees but the operator, but that technical director. And I think that's, if I'm not sure what other things have been done behind the scenes, but that's a big deal. I want to take a little closer look at the new camera module. And as you recall, when a second version of a module is added, the original one has a Roman numeral 1 after it, and the second one gets a Roman numeral 2. Well, with camera modules, we're now up to Roman numeral 3. So I might refer to something as a camera 3 module, and that would refer to camera Roman numeral 3 module. That is the third version of the camera module, as opposed to camera number 3, where I would have 1, 2, 3 cameras operating. And so this would be the third of 3 cameras. So that's not what we're referring to here. We're referring to camera module Roman numeral 3. And I've got one set up on the screen here. I'm going to flip over to it here for just a second. And this just happens to be camera number 4, because I've got 3 other cameras in use. And this is a camera 3 module. And I can right-click this camera module, and I can check the info box right here. I will go all the way down to the info box to start out there. And let me pull that window in. And we can see that it's a module type camera 3, Roman numeral 3. Okay, so we got the right one. And you noticed, if you haven't seen one of these before, that I simply right-click in the window and it brings up a whole list of devices that we can use. Let me go off screen for just a second, and I'm going to move that over. So yeah, there we go. The very first choice that we've got is a video device. Now that's going to be our camera, or our virtual camera, as the case may be. In this case, you can see I've got lots of choices there. This is a capture card that I've got installed that I'm waiting for some other parts to arrive for. The VidBlaster VVD is actually an option. Microsoft LifeCam and the Logitech HD Pro webcam. Well, the Logitech is what I'm using for the broadcast, so we'll select the LifeCam here. And you'll see that'll come up and show what I'm going to show you guys in just a few minutes. And you can actually see here in the screen capture how the video is not tremendously smooth because it doesn't need to be smooth. Now I'm going to switch to the cam directly, and you can see, oh, we got plenty good video right there. That's the camera itself. But looking at how the camera is displayed on the desktop, it's a little less smooth. Now, in some cases, I know this second one is kind of grayed out, but trust me, it says video input. If you've got a camera that might be, let's see, what's a good example? If you're using an EasyCap that has an option of a RCA jack, which would be composite, or a S-Video jack, which would be S-Video, those choices would appear here. That is, that VidBlaster would sense that you have more than one way to connect, so you would select your camera here, and then you would come over and select your video input here as composite or component. And depending on your camera, this third level, the video standard, if your camera was, for example, a PAL, a PAL camera, you would select that there. But that would be folks in Europe would have the PAL cameras, and the folks here in the US would have the other type. Video resolution will show the video resolutions that VidBlaster senses for that particular camera. So we've got from 16 by 120 all the way up to 1280 by 800 is available here in this particular camera, the Microsoft LifeCam. If I select auto, as you can see the little dot out to the side on auto, that means that is currently selected. If I select auto, that means that I have essentially told the camera module to pick up whatever the global resolution in VidBlaster is and use that. So we'll go back and look at resolution again. And do we have an 864 by 480? No, we don't. So this camera will do the best it can. It may give us the 960 by 544 and then scale that down automatically. That's the auto setting. All right, we'll come back. Next to that is frame rate. Frame rate works in a similar fashion to video resolution. It'll pick up the global frame rate, or it will pick up the available frame rates in the camera. Frame rate multiplier, that's a new one on me. I just saw that for the first time the other day, and I have no clue why that's there, so we'll have to get some information on that and get back to you on what a frame rate multiplier is. Perhaps if I had something that was 60 frames a second and was coming into me on a Blackmagic card and I couldn't do anything else with it, I could use a multiplier of 0.5 to drop it back to 30 frames a second. Not sure. Deinterlacing is available in the camera Roman numeral 3 module, but with a note that that is only in the studio and broadcast versions. and it is a pretty high quality D-Inner laser from what I understand. I don't use one myself, but from what other people say, that is, it's pretty high quality. The smooth resampling feature uses some CPU use, but basically it does a better job of blending and rounding corners, so you have a smoother look. Transition allows you to select between a hard cut and a slow dissolve. Aspect ratio has not changed, where you can do auto, which is whatever VidBlaster's global setting, or you can choose between the 4:3 resolution and the 178, 4:3 aspect ratio and the 178 aspect ratio. The crop feature here in the Camera 3 module, again, is only available in some editions of VidBlaster. I believe it's not available in the home edition. But the crop allows you to crop out any artifacts that might just be on the edge of your video for any reason. And then the display size is pretty cool. There's some people, let me get those menus out of the way. There's some people that like to activate a module just by clicking on it, and you can do it just clicking right here in the middle of the screen, and pow, that brings that module up to the program. We'll go back to it the other way. You can also click the cut button, which will do the same thing. Or if your transition is set, let's see, transition is set for a slow dissolve, and you click the trans button, it'll do a slow dissolve to that camera. If I take the display size and I change it from default to, let's start out, excuse me, with 25%, it takes those controls off and just gives me the video image. And now, whatever the transition is, it will take that transition and use it as it moves to that shot. And I can go from, what it was this, 25%? Yeah, so I can go 50%. And I can go back to full size, which would be 864 by 480, but I don't want to do that because that's going to blow out this little window that I've created right here for you. I think this is going to be kind of interesting as people begin to use the instant replay and don't need the buttons on the cameras, but they want to see what the image is that camera is currently showing, and they can use that as a way to do that. So let's go back and finish the rest of our menus here. We had display size, info we saw just a second ago. Clear allows me to clear it out and use a different camera in there, so I can clear that out and I can come back and select a different camera. Let's see, it did keep that image in there, didn't it? Let's see. Let's go to clear. What happens if we select that? Yeah, so it does retain that image. Well, that's probably a bug. And then remove module. We'll take the module out altogether, and we would start again. Let's go ahead and put that module back in, though. Add camera 3. And this is now going to number itself camera number 4, because that is the next camera in the sequence. And we'll set it back up for the Logitech. And we can transition to it, and there it is. So that's the camera number 3 module. Camera number 3 module was introduced, let me get my cheat sheet here, was introduced in version 3.06, and it has some special controls that were added for it in the API to pins for the cut, for the device, and for the transition, so that you can select a different transition in the API, and you can, let's see which one was device. Yeah, so you can actually change cameras using the API to change cameras if you want to, which could be really interesting if you were in a situation where you were switching remotely from a different part of the room, and that would be It's a way to change cameras from across the room. That's pretty cool. A couple of notes here in the chat room. Martin Kay, who worked in the most recent private beta group here on version 3, says that crop can also be used to do an aspect ratio conversion without the black bars at the tops or the sides. And that's pretty good. Oh, and Martin also mentions when we talk about the multiplier, let's go back to our little guy here. We were talking about the frame rate multiplier, that is there because some cards don't correctly report the frame rate they're sending. So they may show 30 when in fact they're sending 60. So a setting of 0.5 could be used to correct that. Well, that makes sense. Kind of what I was saying, but a whole lot better. Martin is very thorough and very detailed. Let's see if there are any other questions about that in the chat here that we might have missed. Let's see, Tom, what software do you use for post-production video editing? None. The VidBlaster file that is recording right now, I will, unless something happens, I will upload it as is straight to YouTube. So my post-production is nil. There have been a couple of times where I guess it was a power outage or something like that, and I had to take 2 recordings and put them together. But other than that, I don't generally do any kind of post-production. And that's the beauty of live to tape, is that unless you really screw up, you don't have any work to do after the fact. And I'm liking that. Now let's see if there's anything else here we missed. And the other Martin says in the chat room that he'll do his aspect ratio conversion with the crop because his PTZ cams are 4:3, and so he wants to put them into 16:9. All right, let's see. Did we miss anything on that subject? Nope, I think we got it. Very good. Okay. What I'd like to do now, unless anybody's got any questions on this, I want to move on to the next subject. I'm not understanding that question, so I'll have to come back to it. A while back, we talked a little bit about how to take a, kind of a quick and dirty way to bring phone calls into a show without getting into a lot of software, without getting into special Skype settings or anything like that. Is there a way to just take your phone and plug it into your mixer and talk through your mic to the folks that are on the other end of the phone? And the answer to that question is yes, there is. And hat tip to Joe DeMax for showing this off. And I know I've kind of showed this one off before, but I need to go a little bit deeper into it because I'm getting some questions from folks, and apparently I was not complete with it. What we use is the cables that would be used with a video camera that would have a composite output, like a lot of the Canons do. In fact, I just stripped this off of one of my Canons, and it's got the 3.5. Put that out where you can see it. Maybe 3.5 millimeter jack. That's a tip, ring, sleeve, ring, sleeve, ring, sleeve. Not stereo, but 3 signals, and the 3 signals are traditionally for the yellow for video and the red and white for audio. This cable just happens to fit into the mic jack on the end of most phones. So voila, it plugs in, and you now have a cable hooked up to your phone. Okay, well that's nothing special. Let's talk about the other end of that cable. And I've got one that's already hooked up, so let's get that one out of the way. And I'm going to switch over. Bear with me. I'm trying not to make anybody seasick on this, but I've got a webcam hooked up, and I'm just gonna grab that webcam, and we'll use that as kind of a demo cam to talk about this. Pay no attention to the mess in the corner. No attention to the mess in the corner. Pay no attention to the crack in the cell phone. I've got another screen on order. Should be able to replace that. So let's see. Let's find our cable, and we'll plug it into the phone right up here at the top. In we go. And the phone senses that it has some headphones plugged into it. And the other end of this cable goes over to my mixer. And you can see I have disabled the white audio lead, and I have connected the video lead into an adapter in the mixer. This is a 1/4 inch mono adapter, RCA female, 1/4 inch male. I love my RCA back. Video, and that happens to be 2 So the output from my phone is now going into the mixer as an input. And that input is set. Let's see, the compression set. About 12 o'clock. Effect off. And this will take a mix. Phone. All the audio wouldn't set it up. Let me get around here, and I'm gonna put a phone number in chat. And let's take a look here and make sure I've got some audio turned on in this phone so that I can hear it if it rings. There we go. And I think that's right. So if somebody out there would like to help us out by giving us a call to the phone number in the chat room, and I understand for those of you watching overseas that you're probably not going to be able to make that call, and I sure understand that. But if anybody else is free and would like to ask a question while they've got me on the line, that might be a lot of fun too. So while we wait for that call, probably should have set this up in advance from somebody. And you don't even have to have a question if you don't want to. You can just call and chat. That would be fine. And if you hear that, I think that's a call coming in. Let's answer that.
Call from unknown caller.
Okay.
Press 1.
Hi, this is Tom.
Hi, this is Tom. Hello.
Hello. Turn down your computer audio.
Oh. Hello. Hang on a minute. Oh, turn down your computer audio. Hang on a minute. Oh, turn down your audio. There we go.
There we go. All right. This is Tom. Who's calling?
This is Greg.
Greg from Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Glad to have you.
I didn't really have a question or anything. I was just watching and I didn't see the phone ring, so I figured I'd call to see if your engineering expertise was up to snuff.
Well, there's probably a lot of doubt about that, but Are you hearing yourself now that you've turned off the computer in the background? Are you hearing yourself on this call?
No.
Okay, good. Then I have it configured correctly. How about that? Got it right. Hat tip to Mike Phillips for learning me how to do mix minus. So, Greg,
everything's good.
That's how easy it is. Now, it obviously, your audio coming across the line to me and to the folks that are listening in, it sounds like a phone. Sounds like a phone. It doesn't sound like that great audio that we might get from a Skype call when we're pulling in the audio from Skype. But, hey, for 89 cents or whatever this darn cable costs on eBay and the mixer that you've already got and the cell phone that you've already got, you're getting calls, live calls on the show. It's cool. So what are you up to today?
Yep. Good. There's a little bit of an echo just because it's basically doing a speaker call, so it's not quite the Skype quality, but on your end. In other words, me hearing you, there's quite a bit of an echo, but what you hear, what's coming out from my voice on air is pretty much dead on.
Really? Okay. I may have something configured not correctly in the background then. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of air noise when you talk on my end just because you're talking through a speakerphone.
Uh-huh.
But because my voice is going straight through your mixer onto the air, then it sounds clear.
Yeah, I shouldn't be on speakerphone. I should be coming to you over my studio mic here. That's interesting.
No,
it's not picking it up at all.
Clear.
Okay.
It sounds like a. Do you have the speakerphone turned on your phone?
Let's see. It is actually disabled. So speaker is disabled. Now I've muted it. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello, Greg. Greg. I just muted it. You didn't hear that though.
Right. You muted it, and so I couldn't hear you through the phone, but of course I have the laptop turned down, so I don't know. I might have been able to hear you.
No, that's all right. I was just testing to make sure this was working. Yeah, the phone says that it's got a headset hooked up to it, and it says that it's taking a call. So I suspect it's just like any other hardwired headset. But from my perspective, from the broadcasting perspective, you are very clear. It's easy to understand what you're saying, and I'll have to work on it and see if. Bob is suggesting in the chat room that I scratch the mic and to prove it's not a speakerphone. So I'm going to beat on the mic here on the phone. Do you hear that? Pounding on a mic? You'd notice it. Okay, and now I'm going to...
No, I don't notice any.
Now I'm going to hit the studio mic. You hear that?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I think you're hearing me over the
Sounds
mic.
like it's coming from a distance.
Yep. Now you may be hearing what the other folks can't hear, which is there's a little bit of fan noise in here, and there's a little bit of echo. Let's see. I'm getting some notes in the question in the chat room. It says, what is the sensitivity of the phone's input socket, and what output level are you sending from the mixer? That's a good question. The output from the mixers, they're set at 12 o'clock. But you're hearing some echo. Let's see, what about, looks like the call volume to the headset is going to be full volume. And we can turn the aux down a little bit to see if that makes sense. Does that make any difference for you, Greg? I appreciate you being a guinea pig on this one.
And it's a little bit different. It just sounds like you're on a speakerphone, but the echo's not quite as bad.
Okay. Yep. And Joe DeMax is saying in the chat room that the mixer should be way down. So let's cut you back to that level. Is that, can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah, that's a little better.
That's a little better? Okay. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's at least now I can make out what you're saying as opposed to it being overmodulated.
Ah, okay. So we were too hot. All right. Well, let's try this. Coming in as the about 10 o'clock there on that channel for this mic, and then about whatever clock that is, 9 o'clock on the send. So is that any better,
Right.
Greg?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Sounds better. All right. What about this? Is that better? Kind of like a doctor's office.
No, that was about the same.
About the same. Okay. All right. Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, obviously, this is the kind of thing you don't want to do on the fly. You want to set it up and get it dialed in up front so you don't blow out somebody's speakers at home. Very good.
Right.
Very good. All right. And I'm going to turn down you just a tad and see how that works. All right, my friend. Well, any questions for me while you got me on the phone?
No, I think you're good. I just wanted to call and see if you had this engineering down on the phone call. It sounds like you got it good.
Well, I appreciate you bailing me out. That's that's what I needed.
And I have that show open voice for you. I just neglected to email it to you, so I'm actually going to put it in the Dropbox and send you a link tonight or tomorrow morning.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. All right. What Greg is referring to is that he has taken Martin Kay's show opener, and he's done voiceover on it. So we will have to see. Somebody in the chat room is saying, "Can you show the settings with the other cam?" Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Let's pick that cam up. I should have been showing you guys this all along. I appreciate the tip on that one. Okay. And I'm just going to focus kind of in on the settings that I really was changing. Here's the cell phone channel, and so this is the audio in from the cell phone. So the mix on aux 1 is 0. That is, he's not getting any of his own audio. Channel 4 is the overhead mic right here, and that had previously been set right there at 12 o'clock, and we've turned it back to 9 o'clock. Now that's not true, 12 and 9, but whatever that setting would be right there, it's set off to the left. And the other thing we did is we took the aux send, which had previously been set at 12 o'clock, and we turned it back to 3 o'clock also. Whoops, sorry about that. And the key word from Greg was that I was over-modulating. Very good. Let's see. And a couple of comments in the chat room says that looks about right. It has to be really low. And the last comment is that mic level input on a phone is extremely sensitive. So we probably were overdriving the phone. All right.
Can hear.
And I appreciate Greg being the guinea pig there and allowing us to kind of blow his eardrums out there and get that dialed in. Let's see, the other notice here in chat is sadly you can't really measure audio levels like clock faces. You need to learn a little bit about the voltages involved and the relative levels in dBs. Yeah. Martin, you're right. And Joe says, in theory, if you had it as high as 12 o'clock, you could burn out the phone's AD. Well, we don't want that. We certainly don't want that. All righty. I'll probably be, Alan, I may do some cutting on that one. Not cutting on it, but I may pull that out and just make that separate. Well, I'll redo it as a tutorial now that we've got the volumes dialed in a little better. But that's, that kind of goes to drive home the point that you do want to test things before you try them. I mean, here we're kind of like a little lab, like a little test bed, and we'll try things without testing them because I want you to see what happens. And the key, and Greg, I really appreciate your help. The key from Greg was to get some good feedback. First he said it feels like there's a little echo, and then he said that it's being overdriven. Then we had some good feedback here from the chat room, so kind of a group collaborative effort to get that dialed in and not blow out your caller's ears or blow out their phone. So that was pretty cool. So now everybody can take calls on your show. Now think about it. If you're doing a sports show after the sporting event, you can hook your cell phone up, get a Google Talk number that you don't ever use that number except for that purpose, and you could even turn it off, when you weren't using it, and publish that number and say, call in, let's talk about the game. And people can call in with their comments. What a great way to add some stickiness to a broadcast. What do I mean by stickiness? That is that people stick with the broadcast. They stay with it, and advertisers like to see that, especially if you've got an event, let's say it's a soccer match where there are no timeouts in soccer. So you're limited as to when you can do advertising, pregame, halftime, postgame. But if you have a postgame call-in show, and as part of that post-game call-in show, you're going to show, again, some of the highlights of the game, people are going to stick around for that. And that's going to give you a great opportunity to plug some more advertising in. Because folks will tolerate, a minute, maybe two of advertising if there's something that they really want to do. And during that 2 minutes of advertising, you've got a chance to get your phone hooked up and get everything ready. You're kind of leaving yourself out there. Obviously, I'm not screening this call, so Greg could have been a crank caller, but he certainly wasn't. So there's a tip for you and a way to do it. Could be a lot of fun. So we've blown through our agenda. We've blown through our 60-minute agenda in 40 minutes. If there are any questions in the chat room, I would certainly entertain those at this point. One of the things that I mentioned last week was that since version 3 is out, I think you want to be a little cautious about using a version 2 profile with version 3. I tried to do that last week, ran into some incompatibilities because some of the module names had changed from version 2 to version 3, and VidBlaster wasn't quite sure exactly how to handle that. At one point I had 2 player 1 modules, and that would be player number 1 as opposed to player Roman numeral 1. One of them was probably a player Roman numeral 2 module, and one was probably a player module Roman numeral 3 module. We better take this cell phone out of the loop before we get something we're not expecting happening here. Have a bill collector call in at that point. Comment from the chat room to stop spinning. Well, Joe, this is what happens when your 60 minutes worth of material gets used up in 40 minutes. You got to spin to make things work. If you've got some, and this is a good plea on my part. If you've got some ideas, some things that you would like to see done, or to like to see if VidBlaster would do, if you will send those to me in a form of an email to tom@thatvidblasterguide.com, I would be delighted to take a look at them. And if I use them on the air, if either I answer your question on the air or I use your suggestion on the air, I will send you a coupon good for $10 off your purchase of VidBlaster in the future. It's spinning in the chair that's bothering you. Sorry about that, guys. I thought he meant spinning a story. Yeah, I do tend to spin a lot. I guess it's a nervous habit. In this case, perhaps it's understandable. One of the things that I am looking forward to here shortly in the future is having an opportunity to build a PC based on the Intel i7 6-core processor. One of the problems that folks seem to be having in migrating from standard definition to high definition with VidBlaster is getting enough CPU horsepower. And I'm curious to know if those extra 2 cores, if VidBlaster can use those efficiently, and we can move to HD as a general course of business. This was a discussion that we had on the Tech Buzz yesterday, and to some degree after the show last week, about high definition versus standard definition. And my premise is always that content is the most important. If people aren't interested in what you have, it doesn't matter how good your video is. Second to content is audio. If they can't understand you, it doesn't matter how good your video is, they won't hang around. Probably third is frame rate. And I would always say that I prefer smooth frame rate over a jerky frame rate. And if I have to choose between high definition at 15 frames a second and standard definition at 30 frames a second, I'm probably going to choose the 30 frames a second, especially if it were a sporting event where if a lot of motion were present. I'm going to choose the frame rate. And once all those are done, if I can have good audio, if I've got good content, if I can have a high frame rate, and if I can do all that at HD, then I'll do HD. That for me is kind of the key. And there's a comment in the chat room that high definition at 60 frames a second or go home. And I think that's probably true, especially for sporting events. That's true. And that obviously doubles the work on the processor to do that too. And there's a comment in the chat room that says, no need to be nervous, Tom. We're all your friends here. And that's true. And Charles, I appreciate that. And what it is, again, I've got 15 minutes of space to fill in order to have my hour show. And Joe DeMac says you cannot broadcast sports at low frame rate ever. And that is absolutely true. There is nothing worse. I would rather see a pixelated video than I would jerky video. There's no doubt about it. And I remember some of my early soccer broadcasts when I was using a dual-core PC with an easy cam attached to it and then using Flash Media Live Encoder to stream. This was before I even knew VidBlaster existed. And, there just wasn't a whole lot of processing power, and so we had to choose between frame rate and resolution. And I chose the lower resolution in order to get the smoother frame rate. And that's just, I guess everybody has to make a quality choice like that. I see John in Florida has joined the show. Good to see you, John. And Dr. Campbell from South Carolina. And anybody else? Oh, and Andrew is here. Andrew from Melbourne, Australia, where it is almost 6 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. Glad to have you, Andrew. Indeed. Well, guys, we're out of content. I'm just going to have to admit it. I can't go with fluff any longer. I will tell you a couple things that are coming down the pike here on the show, because I can't wait. I have had waiting. This is a dongle for a Magewell 006AE 6-port standard definition capture card that is very reasonably priced. And I am still waiting for the BNC to RCA adapters to show up so that I can put 6 cams on this and really stress it and see if this card is going to be good for sports, because I think that's what it's really going to be good for. And what else? Let's see. I'm also waiting for a motherboard to get my main PC back up and running. So that's going to be fun. And I am, thanks to David Stemper, David's not on the show today. And Martin K, my BNC cables, I don't have BNC cables. I have RCA cables. And I sent all my BNC to RCA connectors to Canada. Apparently there's a shortage of them across the border, and they needed mine. But I'm looking forward to, in future shows, having that ready to go. And Joe was commenting last week that BNC cables are much preferred because they lock, and I can see that would be the case. But it's not something that I've ever used at all. And Joe says he's got about 50 of them, and I've got, I think, a half a box, which is probably 50 on order that are supposed to be arriving. Well, they were supposed to be here last week. You know how that is. I got a shipment today that has nothing to do with tech stuff. It's a filter for my wet dry vac, my shop vac. It came in a giant box, and I opened it up, and they'd sent me half a dozen of them, so I'm going to have to send 5 of them back. John says in his VB menu, his frame rate for 5060 is grayed out. And John, that is because the 5060 frame rate is only available in the broadcast version. But if you don't have a camera that's producing 50 frames, 60 frames a second in the U.S., wouldn't worry about it. Most cams that are going to be in our price range are going to be 30 frames a second maximum. Well, I take that back. I may have a 60 frame a second camera here. I'll just have to try it. Anyway, Joe says the standard for 70p is 5060, and that would be 50 for PAL and 60 for US. So there we go. Well, guys, I think we're going to close up this segment of the show, and for anybody that wants to hang out afterwards, we can let our hair down a little bit. But we are on live every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in the United Kingdom, and 5 a.m. on Thursday in Melbourne, Australia. We hope you'll tune in to us live. That VidBlasterGuide.com. If you're interested in VidBlaster, shoot me an email, tom@thatvidblasterguide.com. If you have questions, I'm happy to give them a shot. And if you're interested in purchasing the software, you can go to our store and buy it. Or if you want to talk to me about it first and make sure it's what you need, because there aren't any refunds. Sorry, once you get a license, you've got the license forever. But let's make sure it's what you need. If you want to try it, you can test out the trial, which is equivalent to the Studio Edition, and you can get that for free from vidblaster.com. Just go to the trial section. So that's going to wrap up our show for today. I really appreciate you guys tuning in the chat and tuning in on YouTube. If I can help you in any way, let me know. And I look forward to seeing y'all next week. So, take care.